Thank God that was only in the supporting listeners group just now, because otherwise we wouldn't even make it to 900 subscribers, let alone 1,000.
I kind of want us to just stay right where we're at. Like 888 is just I don't know. There's something that feels real good about that.
Is there any significance to that number by any chance? That's not one of those numbers that certain people really look to. Is it? It feels like it is. I don't know why, though.
Affectionately known as the angel number, it's a symbol of abundance and positivity in numerology.
Okay.
When you notice this number appearing often, be prepared for an overwhelming amount of goodness coming your way.
Okay. There's some number with an 8 that has a little bit more of a Germanophile sort of association with some people.
In Christian numerology, the number I'm tracking now.
I'm trying to. I don't know what number it is, but it's one of those. There's an 8 in there.
Yeah, I was born in '88.
Oh, is that what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know, because again, there's this poisonous world that has made me aware that such things exist.
If you go to Walmart, it's funny because they often have lots of products that cost $14.88, and that's just that's kind of funny. You'd think that in this current climate, current cultural climate, that they would have changed something like that.
Yeah.
What's up, John Hartman? Good to see John in the house. All right. So let me get this stream pushed out there. In Christian numerology, the number 88 represents Jesus, or sometimes more specifically, Christ the Redeemer. This representation may be justified either through gematria, counting the letter values of the Greek transliteration of Jesus' name, or as an opposing value to 666, the number of the beast. In Chinese numerology, 888 usually means triple fortune. As S form A strengthening of the digit 8 as a form of, I don't know what that's supposed to say. On its own, the number 8 is often
trans numerology around here. Now with Patriot Steve.
As on its own, the number 8 is often associated with great fortune, wealth, and spiritual enlightenment. Hence, it's considered triple. So that's like the perfect number for us. Maybe we need to have 888 on our logo, because it's on one hand you have Christ the King, and then on the other hand you have great wealth, fortune, and spiritual enlightenment. That's like our magic number. I don't think anybody would have any problem with like seeing a logo of like a king, like a really like prominent, powerful male figure as a leader with an 888. I can't imagine that would raise any red flags.
Nope.
Not the slightest.
If you like it, I love it. So
deal.
I'm here for it.
So today we're not going to be asking people to subscribe, because we don't want you to subscribe. Please don't unsubscribe.
Don't just do whatever you're doing. Just keep doing it.
Keep it up. Don't stop. Okay. We are going to tell you guys about our
right down the middle
wonderful sponsors here in just one moment.
Do you have a broken second metatarsal?
I do not.
Well, just in case you do, make sure that for the pain and inflammation and healing, you go and visit PalomaVerdeCBD.com.
Nailed it.
And get all of your CBD ointments, salves, everything, gummies, to trip you out a little bit, and then just load up your cart and then use promo code KING for 25% off of your entire order.
25%. That's a good ass discount.
That's right. 888% off of your final your subtotal. That's not including taxes.
That's taxes separate. And fees.
Mm-hmm. and after those fees, it works out to about 75% of what your subtotal was.
We make the numbers work.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
All right. So that's posted out on the social media there. And then we should be live on Facebook as well.
Oh, my goodness. Facebook.
Mark Clare tagged you in a post. Why am I being tagged in a post?
Does anyone even watch on Facebook? I feel like
Yes.
there's like always one or zero or two people.
Yeah, I think there's usually there's some people, there's some loyal listeners who tune in there. That's where everything started
On Facebook. Yeah.
back in the day. Remember we did a couple episodes with Jason McCrary?
Yeah.
The three of us all talking. I haven't talked to him in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully everything's going well with him. Shout out Jason
It looks
McCrary.
like it's going well. He looks very studly when I see his photos on social media.
Yes, he's very good at looking very good on social media.
Yeah.
All right. Ooh, yes.
I'll tell you a man that doesn't have a broken second metatarsal. Jason.
I would assume he doesn't.
I bet neither Jason. Jason Stapleton, he wouldn't even blink if he had a broken second metatarsal, which I didn't either. I didn't
He
think
would eat it.
I thought I was fine. I was doing all kinds of stuff. Does it hurt? No. I was like, I think it might be broken. I said, probably not, but God damn it was.
So why don't you tell everyone how you broke your second metatarsal?
Just high IQ. Yeah. When you guys, no offense, watching, you guys probably don't have to worry about it, but when you cross a certain threshold, it changes the gravity around you, and it can wreak its effects on just more sort of brittle. But not that I have any brittle bones in my body, but relatively, by comparison, brittle bones in my body. And second metatarsal was the weapon of choice, but I was doing some real deep thinking at the time, and just snaparooski. So there we are. So it's a blessing and a curse, I suppose.
How's it a blessing?
Have such a big brain. You know what? It's just actually a curse, because it makes the rest of you right. It makes the rest of life really, really insufferable. Just dealing with almost anything and almost anyone, except if you are subscribed to this channel, in which case
it is. It's really a burden having to carry around such a big brain. It sucks being just the smartest person in every room that you're ever in.
I resorted on Twitter. I'm now just doing like Colin Quinn if he was a libertarian. Like, that's all I'm doing. I told Vin. I haven't had the balls to fucking tag anybody, but like I wrote one about Vin. It was like, who's this new kid on the block? Vin talking about magic. Get your own thing. I've been saying that we really need to pull a rabbit out of a hat for a long time now. Yeah. So fucking dumb. But that's all that Twitter really deserves, I'll say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I definitely take Twitter way too seriously. You definitely do it the right way. I take it too seriously and end up letting it take up too much of my day. But what are you going to do? It is what it is.
I had a decent one about Dave. I think the one about Dave was actually decent. Not to pat myself on the back, but
that was very good.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people are counting out Dave Smith for his run for president because he's a comedian. But if you ask me, when it comes to dealing with these jokers in Washington, jokers in all caps, but of course, jokers in Washington, he's just the man for the job. Fucking asshole. So that's what Twitter gets from me for the foreseeable future. That's it. That's all you get, Twitter. Libertarian Colin Quinn.
And if you would like to partake in such a wonderful experience, then just go to Messina Inc. on Twitter, @Messina Inc. Yeah. Go follow him. Go harass and torment him. You can also follow me @RealKingPilled. And yeah. All right. So we're about 10 minutes in, so I guess we should start taking it seriously.
Someone who has to deal with jokers doesn't need to be a comedian. The comedians are the jokers. Comedian and jokers are the same thing. Sorry. I'm just preempting any replies to that tweet. Sorry, go ahead.
There's that compulsive urge to have to go full autist on every single thing that you read.
Oh, I know.
Sometimes the best tweets are the ones that you type out and then delete before hitting tweet. Sometimes those are the best ones.
The best tweets are the ones that we deleted along the way. That's for sure.
There you go. There's a good tweet. Okay, so first of all, before we get into the bulk of everything, I'll just tell you guys, go check out Jose Galasson, his channel. He's got some good conversations on there, and he and I had a really good conversation last night. Jose Galasson, it's Galison, and he's a good dude. He described himself as a retard who reads books, and I very much identify with that. And he and I had a really great conversation last night. We talked for almost 2 hours, and we could have kept going. We could have kept talking for 2 more hours, and we talked about a lot of the stuff that I wanted to get into today on this show. And that was part of the reason why Jose and I decided to talk about it then, was as kind of a build up for this. Because last week or last episode on Monday, Stephen and I were talking about that we wanted to use this episode as a chance to kind of button up all the loose ends from the whole Liberty lockdown meltdown and everything that was associated with it. And really like our opinion on the LPMC. And we just kind of want to use this as an opportunity to, hopefully what comes out of this conversation is that in the future, when people ask our opinion on this matter, we can just point them to this episode. And this is where, this is where we lay out not only our position on something like the LPMC, what they're attempting to do right now, but also what we believe the alternative should be and what we prefer as a route forward.
And I believe we're trying to keep it pretty, between the lines, not inflammatory in any way.
Right.
And,
we specifically didn't use any names in the title.
Yeah.
Because
so I think the operating theory is basically we're trying to plainly state that we think it's a shadow organization for NAMBLA, headed up by Dave Smith, who's sort of the ringleader. Was that?
I have Red Bull in my sinuses.
Yeah, I was trying to time it. It's hard because I'm trying to figure the delay. But I was like, maybe this will hit at the right time. It looks like it did.
Oh,
okay.
That was
Thank you.
That was great.
Clearly don't.
That was.
I know.
We have to get. I walked right into that one.
Spectrum warnings for everybody. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Yeah. Not LPNC, it's LPMC, Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. That's the shorthand. And our goal isn't to, we deliberately didn't put names in the title because our goal here really isn't to be in the shit flinging business. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to pick fights. We aren't trying to, attack people or anything like that. What we're trying to do is to start another conversation. We're trying to use this opportunity as a this window where people are kind of having these conversations and kind of winding up for the launch into this next election cycle. We're trying to use this window as an opportunity to pull people away from that route if they don't think that route is ultimately going to yield dividends after they hear our case. So at least for me, I'm not trying to get the LPMC to stop doing what they're doing. I'm not even necessarily trying to convince them to do anything different. I think I would like it if they heard what we have to say and like took it into consideration and adapted, going forward. I think that's probably kind of hard once you hear kind of everything that we have to say. It'd be kind of hard to adapt. These are not diametrically opposed strategies, but they're like orthogonal. Like they're just not associated. They don't even cross at all. So our goal here isn't to pick a fight or make anything personal or cast aspersions or anything like that. That's not what we're trying to do, and that hasn't been our goal all along. What we want is we want to make our case. And for me in particular, I've deliberately said some things that are provocative because I want to get people talking about it, and I want something that is going to generate more conversation. And those things are going to be more inflammatory or provocative. And
yeah, what we don't want is an audience. I think that might be one misconception.
Right.
So, this is just
we don't want an audience.
Detail.
We want an echo chamber.
Precisely. If I know my Matthew, and I do, by the way, Matthew's not trying to. Matthew would say inflammatory things. It's not to grow an audience. That's not why. Because anyone who comes here is going to go. Who's not supposed to be here is going to go away real fast anyway.
Yes.
So the motivation. Now I can understand why you may think that it is for an audience, but that's not the game we're playing over here. Not by a long shot.
Our goal is to drive away the audience. All we want to have is the inner circle, kind of. We want to have the best of the best.
Yeah, so we would like to have the king-pilled inner circle is what we will call it.
Nobody else has ever used that term before, right. So that's perfect. Yeah, so if you take exception or take offense or whatever and don't like what we have to say, if you disagree, you're welcome to engage with us and make your case, and we'll consider it or not. But ultimately, I'm not in the business of evangelism. I'm in the business of preaching to the choir. And we want to find the people who already think like we do or are already inclined to. And we want to gather them together in one place
or even
where we can create
we'll go as far as like fancy. Fancy. Yeah. Like they're sort of on the fence.
Oh, yeah. On the fence. Yeah. As long as you are open to considering what we have to say and you're interested in investing yourself going forward in the same things that we want to invest ourselves, we're happy to have you. If you think that we're complete,
sorry.
We're in the middle of.
I know it's.
We're in the middle of the TV show Outlander right now, Amy and I, and there are some scenes in that movie that are. Anyways, you saying "have you sexually" that made me think of the show. Anyways,
do you need to take a break? Do you need
no?
Do you want me to hold? I can talk for 3 minutes. You'll be fine.
No, I'm quick. I'm quick. I'm already done.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're if you disagree, if you're offended, if you don't like what we have to say, if this doesn't connect with you, that's fine. It's not meant to connect with you.
Not right now. Maybe later. Might connect later.
Someday you'll look back and say, "Oh, they were right, man. I wish I would have listened back then." But
the chances are we'll be in a different place because, I don't think the other thing I would maybe take issue with is I don't think anyone here, either in the chat, well, maybe in the chat. There's probably some people in the chat who think they have everything figured out. But I don't think we think we have everything figured out.
Right.
I think we have a form of discussion, and I think maybe we made the mistake of thinking at one point that we had everything figured out. And then the certain sort of foolishness and embarrassment that when the world appeared to sort of shift and change before our eyes, we may have kind of taken the position of, well, not going to let that happen again, and not that the world's not going to shift again. It's just that we'll be so firmly rooted in anything, or limited by label or an ideology or, trapped in any way. And that's why everything in here is just kind of so mercurial. So I think maybe if you are 20 something, kind of person that we're, lightly jabbing at occasionally, or, the kind of person that we don't want in the echo chamber currently, you might need to just go down that road for a little bit. And then, things will just kind of make more sense. It's not to say, maybe we have a little bit more sort of experience, that has caused us to think this way. But it's sort of just if you're growing up or you're doing it the right way, as you hit sort of benchmark ages, just things that older people have said to you over time resonate and make sense. That's all. Just Uncle Stevie Boy and Cousin Matthew just trying
Why am I a cousin?
Trying to shepherd, because you're young, trying to shepherd you along on your way. That's all.
Yeah, I think you went and yeah, that was funny.
I'm going to let you be, I'm going to be the soft one. I'm going to be the soft, gentle one.
I was going to say, I think you were trying to deliver the message the soft, gentle way, and you delivered it.
Yeah,
that's definitely going to get the rees.
Just come along. Just come along with Uncle Stevie Boy to the guest bedroom and just have a neck massage. He's going to tell you that everything's going to be fine. God is making my computer die right now, by the way. He's got a low battery warning.
That is, the hand of God is striking you down.
It is. You should continue whatever thought you were saying. These with keep talking about the young boys that you want to sort of shepherd along in their development. Go ahead, Matthew.
I don't know how we're going to recover.
Be gentle.
Be gentle.
They'll recover with therapy. How we recover is inconsequential.
Just slow and cautious and gentle.
That's right.
Tender. Take
your time. Easy there, fella.
You guys just relax. Just relax and just kind of go with it. You know?
Damn it. Remember we said we're going to refer people? It's like, listen, if you want our roadmap of our thought process, this is the episode you're going to go to. We're going to have to give a timestamp, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh, okay.
You're going to have to skip forward to about minute 25.
Yeah, or so.
Which is 5 minutes from now.
That's right.
Get them as far away from possible.
Right now.
Uncle Stevie Boy is gone. I like how it has your little avatar is NLN because you're neither left nor right, so it just picks the first three. So you're now NLN. Okay. Whew. All right, he'll be back at any point here. So our goal is not for this to be an antagonistic engagement. We're not trying to we're not trying to tell you guys that you shouldn't do what you're doing. We're trying to tell you guys that what you're doing will not have the results that you think it will, and that if you want to have the results that you claim that you want to have, there's a different route to take. And then we're also making the case that we have a different route altogether, that you shouldn't even, you shouldn't even want the thing that you claim to want. There's actually something deeper. There's something that goes beyond that point. And I tweeted something today. I said, see if I can remember exactly. I'm just going to read it because I don't remember exactly how I said it. But I said that, okay, I have a lot of tweets this morning. I said, if you're arguing your position with someone who used to hold your position and now does not, then simply reasserting all the standard arguments for your position isn't sufficient. If they were persuaded away in spite of knowing those things, then you must expand your focus. So if we moved ourselves beyond the standard libertarian conversation, then pulling us back to it doesn't, like, we don't need to keep having the same conversation over and over again. Yes, we understand taxation is theft. Yes, we understand the state is evil. Yes, we understand like all these things. Yes, we understand the NAP. We understand all these things. What we're talking about is we're looking at the theory and we're looking at its impact on the world, and we're seeing that the theory applied doesn't result in the desired outcome. And so we're exploring, okay, why is that? Why is that? Why is it that if you behave like a libertarian, if you try to convince people to be libertarians, if you take a libertarian approach to government, why is it that you wind up with the opposite of a libertarian outcome? And there's a reason for that. Like, once you start digging into it, you realize that you have just stumbled upon something fundamental. This is like the difference. I like Moldbug's analogy where it's like the difference between Newtonian mechanics and quantum mechanics. So Newtonian mechanics is fine at like the local level, but Newtonian mechanics and quantum mechanics have both been independently verified. You can make predictions, you can test them, and you can get the results that you expected in both realms, but they come to like opposite conclusions about reality. Nobody has been able to marry them together. At a certain point, Newtonian mechanics fails, and you have to have a larger explanation that contains it, within which it exists. So that's what we're saying here, that there's something that goes beyond the traditional libertarian understanding. The traditional libertarian theory is a description of the ideal, but it has to be treated as a goal, and not as the conditions that will create the goal. So you have to start with a goal and reverse engineer back. And what you're trying to reverse engineer is human social arrangements. So you need to understand how human social arrangements work, how they form, how they structure themselves, how they adapt, how they move. You have to understand those things. You have to understand the principles upon which they operate. And that takes you into a completely new realm where you're no longer in the political realm, you're in the anthropological realm. Now you're looking at human beings instead of looking, this is where people get squeamish, but this is necessary. Instead of evaluating human beings as moral agents, you have to evaluate them as animals, evaluate them as they operate instinctually. Because morality is something that gets placed on top of the lower base level, and you need to understand the lower base level to understand how the morality is applied. So this is a completely new realm of study. And the problem with it from the perspective of the existing regime is that it strikes directly at the heart of the political formulas upon which this regime was built. It undermines it. It cuts in half the sacred cows of democracy because when you study people, when you study how people operate, you realize very quickly that democracy is completely non-viable. It's stillborn. It doesn't ever even get off the ground. And when you apply that understanding to the existing regime, all of the fictions that hold the structure up all just come collapsing down and falling apart. That is not favorable whatsoever to the people whose financial interests are most bound up with the regime, which is not just wealthy people. Very, very poor people, their financial interests are very much bound up with the regime. Lots of middle-class people, their financial interests are very bound up with the regime.
I heard poor people. What's up?
Stop being poor.
All right.
We're going to have those shirts, by the way. Once we start doing merch, definitely going to have a Stop Being Poor shirt.
As soon as I can afford one, like I'm buying multiple.
Yeah. That's going to be great. Have you been listening this whole time? Like,
I've been on the phone with my mechanic also. I plugged in my computer and then the mechanic call. Yeah. So everything's going great. Yeah, everything's fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. So
more people have a vested interest in the regime.
Right. Yeah.
How else am I going to get my checks if not from the regime?
That's right. That's right, Joey boy. Where's my next check? I've got a kid now. I need a check for him too.
Oh, please don't say that.
Which, if I may, I just have to say that being a father is the coolest thing.
Okay.
Watching this little human being growing up every day is such a freaking treasure. It's so rewarding. Even like the days where it's not great, where like he's in a bad mood or his teeth are hurting or his stomach is upset or he's tired. The other night he wouldn't go to bed. And it took us like 2 hours to get him to bed. And he just wouldn't go to sleep. And Amy was getting tired and like frustrated with the fact that he wouldn't go to sleep. So I just went in and picked him up and carried him out into our loft and just sat there and played with him for like an hour. And he's like climbing. He wants to climb. He wants to stand up. He wants to jump. And then he's starting to trench crawl and pull himself along. And so he just wants to be up, down, up, down, up, down, all over, stand up, lay down, roll over, jump, constantly. And it was super, super rewarding to me to just sit down there with him for an hour and just play. Mm-hmm. Just like watch him learn how to do stuff and watch him like engaging and problem solving. And while I'm watching his interest go from one thing to the next and just kind of watching the whole thing happen, I'm reading this book on mimetic theory right now, the Girardian mimetic theory. And one thing that the author pointed out is that we learn about ourselves through our children. This is a feature of the human species, that the human species has children. Like part of the maturing process, the maturation process for the human animal is having a child. Because before you have a child and after you have a child, you're a different person. You continue to mature in a different way once you have a child than you do without one. So it's a necessary baked in part of the maturation process for a human being because they begin to see themselves in the little person, and they recognize how the little person does stuff, and they see themselves doing the exact same thing, that we all have the same behavior patterns, that we respond to incentives in the same way. And desire is the thing with mimetic theory from Rene Girard. It's like basically all human behavior is driven by desire. And we desire we determine what we're going to desire based on what other people desire. So we watch someone else desire something, and that makes us want to desire it as well. You see this with like little kids, where the little kid will be sitting there and there'll be a toy and nobody's playing with it. And some other little kid will come over and pick the toy up to start playing with it. And now the kid wants it. He didn't want the toy until the other kid did. Once the other kid wanted it, then he wanted it as well. You see this with women, that a man becomes more attractive to other women once he's taken, because people want to desire what other people desire. This phenomenon is what drives human organization. It's what drives politics ultimately, because politics is what happens when two groups of people both want the same thing at the same time for different purposes. That's when you get politics. So understanding mimetic theory, understanding mimetic desire and the way that functions, and then the scapegoat mechanism and all those things that play into that, you have to understand these things. People scoff at archetypes and whatever else. You need to understand these things if you actually care about these libertarian ideas that you talk about all the time, because this is the key. This is the secret to actually doing something that could cause those ideas to have a big influence on the world. Were you going to jump in and say something?
Well, I think you kind of misspoke, because it's three groups of people arguing, because you got the left and you got the right, and then you have someone like me, who doesn't consider himself left nor right. I wish you would stop forgetting about me.
I just forget about you because you're so forgettable.
Right.
Buck Johnson, shout out Buck Johnson. He had, I don't know if you saw this tweet. He said that we're neither left nor right is the they them of politics, which is just absolutely fantastic.
Also not a big fan of the neither left nor right thing. Buck Johnson, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Also not a fan of neither left nor right. So I'm sorry to say that you guys are going to be having a falling out.
Okay, yeah.
Now that you've come out,
I challenge you to a debate on Lions of Liberty, Buck Johnson, for your racism and pedophilia. So it's kind of funny. Buck Johnson. I know I spent as many high IQ people do. I spent the first half of the show explaining that I was high IQ. That's how you would know it's true. But this might kind of undermine a little bit. I didn't know that Buck Johnson and Buck Sexton were different people for longer than I'm willing to own up to. So I'll say a week, and just know that it was longer than a week. And when I say longer than a week, I mean considerably longer. But I would hear and pass. I would see, Buck Sexton, tweets and stuff like that, and I would hear about Buck Johnson. And eventually, I saw like a picture of Buck Johnson. And I was like, that motherfucker got to the gym, like it's pretty interesting. Or just like, looks interesting in a suit. It's like, okay, you put a suit on him, and then it became clear that it was different people. So,
how'd that make you feel?
Well, it made me feel like I'm ready to debate him on Lions of Liberty
for his racism and pedophilia.
And all, mostly, but then also scoffing at my characterization of myself, where I'm neither left nor right. I don't fit in a box, Buck. Sorry, conformist.
I like how we said that we're not. This is going to be the episode where we're not.
I need to get back to just any kind of physical activity, because I'm 10 times more insufferable than normal. I was looking at cats. Cats have like a sympathetic nervous system, and that's why they'll just flip the fuck out and like bite your hand. It's basically they take in this energy and they just need to get it out. And so it's just why you're petting the cat, and all of a sudden it just like bites you and bunny kicks the shit out of you. It's like you've stimulated it. And so, I didn't realize how much of my life was just doing physical things to the point of where I'm just totally exhausted, like completely physically exhausted and can't do anything. And like just like sort of not having a real job has allotted me that flexibility to get all of that out of me so that I'm mildly tolerable, but being injured for like 3 weeks and now with like no horizon of like getting back with this new thing, it's just I'm reminded of how absolutely insufferable I am. And maybe I have a sympathetic nervous system also exclusively.
My wife definitely has a sympathetic nervous system. Yeah. She has that. Yeah.
Lucky you.
Yeah. She's a spicy one. How does monarchy eliminate voting? I don't understand what that question means. How does it eliminate voting? Are you meaning like what is the mechanism for taking power? Like what is the mechanism for converting people to the reality where they don't vote anymore?
Yeah, maybe the system of democracy. Is it? I don't know if this is like okay, we have a king, now what? Because I suppose if you could vote in a monarch. You could vote in someone who behaved like a monarch, theoretically, right? That's like one way to do it. I don't advocate that, but like if Trump was what people, the caricature that they like made him out to be, and like was actually like one of these guys who was just like, I'm going to be in here, indefinitely. Like I'll be in here for 10 terms. I don't give a shit. That would effectively be a monarch. And so, if he decides he's going to be in there for 10 terms, like maybe he would have bullshit elections where he would fortify them himself, or maybe he would just cancel the elections. That gets rid of voting.
There's a whole bunch of different ways you can structure it. Like to me, I don't really care about that all that much because I think that sort of problem gets solved when you solve the underlying problems. I mean, you can do it a number of ways. You can have someone say, you could have a president right now say that if I'm elected, I'm going to like give themselves a thing and say, if you elect me, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to abolish Congress. I'm going to send the Supreme Court home. And I'm going to, take a poop on the Constitution, and then I'm going to appoint myself dictator for life. And if he's elected, if he can persuade sufficient people to support him in doing that, then he could do it that way. So, like, obviously, I'm not saying that's realistic or anything like that. I'm saying there's all kinds of different ways that it can be done. It's a matter of engineering it. But you start with the outcome that you're trying to get, and then you engineer to it.
Mm-hmm. That was that whole I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. It was totally the Vince McMahon meme.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So the when you fell over out of your chair was when I said take a poop on the Constitution.
Yeah, exactly.
That's because I killed the patriot in you.
Yeah.
You can't type in all caps anymore.
I know. That. Yeah. How dare you?
Libtards.
Yeah. I will say, for anyone who wants an incentive to join the supporting listeners group, the character. What are we going? Are we going? Constitutional Republican Steve? Like what is Boomer Steve? What is it?
It's like Boomer Patriot Steve.
Boomer Patriot. Yeah, Boomer Patriot Steve. That's a real fun one. It's significantly more impressive than my existing personality.
My wife said that it's her favorite of your characters, and she's heard a lot of your characters.
Sure.
I think it's up there with the Hispanic Jason.
I'm a big fan of Hispanic outreach. Jason Stapleton has got to be one of my favorites. That's just me personally. For me and my own. Oh boy.
What was BlackRock? It was what was it?
El Rock Negro. Escúchame. Mi gente. Hay muchos problemas. El Rock Negro. God. It's pretty fun.
See, if you guys were in the supporting listeners group,
yeah, you really have to.
You would be exposed to all this stuff. You wouldn't have it just now.
Right.
Jonathan wants to know how to join the supporting listeners group. Again,
if you don't,
I don't know why we have to keep explaining this.
Tampoco yo. Yo no sé. Juan,
just join it. Just join it. You don't have to have a conversation about it. You just got to do it.
Dale, chico. Orale. ¿Qué pasa, Carlos?
¿Qué pasa, Carlos? I really hope Carlos is still in here.
I hope so too.
Amy says Nicolas Cage in National Treasure 3. Trump dumps on the Constitution. Oh. Okay.
All right. Shifting
All right.
gears.
So I want to pull something up here real quick because we just addressed this.
Let's address it. I don't know what you're talking about.
How do I do this here? Okay. This Mises Caucus thing. So,
you didn't do that? I was trying to give you ample time to do that when I wasn't around. Okay.
No, we were. Yeah, this is
the timestamp. You fast forward to 40 minutes and 45 seconds, and this is where everything's real serious right now. This is a very comprehensive.
This is acknowledgement that when we make fun of autists, or at least when I do, it's self-deprecating.
Bitch. Yeah.
Right. Because this is 100% right now. Like this, someone needs to make the.
I can see your house and it doesn't look like it's made of glass. Okay, sorry. That was the last one.
This is the Charlie from It's Always Sunny, who's like got the conspiracy board, and he's like, So this is me doing that. But what I've been finding as I've had this conversation with people is that it comes off as if I'm constantly moving the goalposts, because I'm making, we'll start talking about one point and then we wind up drifting off and we're talking about another point. And it feels like I'm making a different point. And that's because it's not that I'm moving the goalposts, it's that there's that many different goalposts. So to me, this approach of going into politics, and not just going into politics, but going into the LP, and then not just taking over the LP just to actually take power, but taking over the LP just to send a message, but then also to try to do stuff locally. All this stuff all together is like, it's like failure on top of failure on top of failure on top of failure. So just to make it clear, this is the flow chart. It's the big question is yes or no. Do you get into political action? Are you going to actually get involved with the state? Are you actually going to run for office or do activism or whatever? So if you decide yes, then you have to have the right message. So you have to make sure that the message that you're selling people is the right message. This is the primary focus of our contention, or our position, our call to people to not go the LPMC route. It's for this reason. It's that all the other stuff doesn't matter. Even if you had all the other stuff below this all figured out, if you don't have the right message, none of the rest of it matters. You have to have the right message first and foremost. And to have the right message, you need to understand where you are at this point in time, how you got here, and where you're going. You need to understand that trajectory. That's where the mimetic theory and the fourth turning and the Machiavellians and Moldbug and all this other stuff, that's where that comes from. That's the trying to get the right message figured out. Because to figure out whether or not you have the right message, you have to make sure that you're shooting in the right direction. So you have to realize that libertarianism, as currently constructed, is a description of the ideal. It's the goal. That's where you've agreed, this is where we need to go. Okay, so how do we get there? So then when you say, how do we get there? You have to confront the question of political action, yes or no. So we're going to say yes. So once you have the right message, you have to get the right medium for that message. You have to take the message through the correct avenue. So is it going to be through the political system? Is it going to be through, or it's going to be through the political system, but is it going to be through the LP or through the GOP? Or is it going to be something different? Are you going to take over a different party altogether? Or is it going to be the Democrats? Like which political route are you going to go? And this is, you figure this out on a personal level, or you can figure it out on a collective level. Either way, you have to figure out which audience is going to be the most amenable to your message. But not just that, because the audience actually comes next. You have to figure out which network of institutions is going to be the most amenable to your message. You have to figure out which set of the elites is going to buy what you're doing and buy into it. Because as we get into the mimetic theory and the fourth turning and everything, and as you read, Pareto and Mosca and Machiavelli, you read all these and you realize that the elites are the key to all of this. You have to have elites who are on your side. You have to have elites who buy what you're doing and are supporting and financing it. So as you can see here, number one, I think that political action right now is a waste of time, generally speaking. For me personally, if I have to assess it for myself, it's not worth the time for me. I'm not going to get involved in a political party. I might vote just because if there's something that seems like it'd be fun to vote on, then I might do it if it doesn't take too much time out of my day to take the ballot and drop it off somewhere or something. But in general, for me, political action, no, it's not worth the time because we don't have anything to offer. That's the biggest thing. So that's the first point where we depart. But that seems to be kind of where a lot of people focus the entire conversation, where they think that they're having the conversation of whether or not to get involved in politics. And I have an opinion about that is primarily, no, don't get involved in politics. But we'll say, all right, let's just say yes for the sake of conversation. All right, then you need to have the right message. And my opinion is that the message that the LPMC crowd is using will not be sufficient. And we'll go into that a little bit here. If you really want to hear the breakdown that I did yesterday, just go listen to Jose Galason's episode on his YouTube channel. Or he's actually on all the podcatchers as well. So he posted that yesterday. His show's called No Way Jose. He posted it last night. Go listen to that. We kind of really went into detail with that. So, but then let's say, okay, just granted, we'll just say you have the right message. So we're going to just grant, yes, get involved in politics. We're going to just grant, yes, you have the right message. The whole, that the state is the source of all your problems. We need to end the Fed. We need to start rolling back the state. We need to, legalize drugs. The standard libertarian Rothbardian fare. That's the message that you're going with. So even then, okay, yeah, great. That's the message that we need to spread liberty. That's the liberty message that we need to get out to people. So then which audience are you going to target that to? Which audience is going to be the most amenable to it? Say you get the elites on board. You have elites who are backing you, who are funding you. Then, Stephen, if you have to go, then that's cool. Don't worry about it. Just dump out and then I'll just do the rest. So even if you get the elites on board with you, even if you have them backing what you're doing, you're getting funding, you're getting whatever you need to do your thing, you have to make sure you're targeting the right people who are actually going to hear it. Because you want to, in a time of crisis, you don't want to be wasting your resources. You don't want to be targeting people who aren't worth targeting. So you want to make sure that you're directed at the right people. Then once you have the right audience, you want to make sure that you're offering them the right product. And finally, if you're offering the right product, you must be the right person to sell it. These are all things that you have to get right in order for this message to be successful. These are all, yeah, buddy, just pop back in at whatever point. You're still in, so have fun. Steven's got to go pick up his car for those who are just listening. So what I'm seeking to do when I talk about this with people is I'm trying to delineate each of these conversations and point out when we are having them, because it's really easy to kind of start drifting along between them. And then it feels like we're never getting anywhere with the conversation. And it feels like the goalposts keep moving around. So to me, and we're going to get into basically what the definition of the king pill is toward the end of this here. But to me, when you get down to this last question, you must be the right person to sell it. That's when you're ready for the king pill. That's where the king pill applies. So you have to become the right person so that you can offer the right product, so you can connect it with the right audience, so that you can work through the correct medium. And then ultimately you have the right message. The right message is in the right product, or kind of one and the same in this case here. But I think to a degree, they're not so much as people think, because if your message is don't purchase statecraft from the state, which is essentially, that's the summarized version of the libertarian message. Don't purchase statecraft from the state. If you're going to say that, then you have to offer them an alternative. If you're saying, don't buy a Hyundai, they'll say, okay, well, what should I buy? If you're like, don't buy a car, period. Okay, so you have to offer me an alternative if you're going to make your case for that. So if you're saying don't purchase statecraft from the state, don't purchase those services, then you have to offer an alternative for the people to go, because people want to purchase statecraft. People want to purchase those services. So they're going to purchase them from whoever's offering if there's only one person offering. So your message is you can purchase statecraft services elsewhere, but then the product is here are the services that you can purchase. And those have to be, you can do it in a way. One thing that Jason Stapleton does is he, with the agency side of his business, he offers what's called fractional CMO, which is like fractional C-suite stuff, where you take one of the C-suite position, so a CMO, a chief marketing officer, and you take that role and you fractionalize it, and you can like have an entire team that manages just the CMO role. So you can contract this out. This is part of the process of what's happening with business. This is the tech bubble is from people just carving off a little section of a company and then fractionalizing it or turning it into a contract basis. So you can have a relatively small entrepreneurial company that can't afford to pay, $400,000 a year for a CMO, but they can take someone on a contract for, 4 or 5 figures a month to do those same services, and they'll save that money. And then sometimes it can even be better because you're not just getting one person, you're getting a whole team. So you can take that same approach to statecraft services to a certain degree. There's some that you just can never break down that much, at least as things stand right now. Again, those are technological issues where you're innovating and trying to engineer new solutions. So the product and the message aren't exactly the same. With the normal libertarian message, they are. With the normal libertarian message, the message that you're trying to sell, the message that you're telling people, but the message that you're telling people doesn't change their lives. It doesn't give them an alternative. It doesn't make them move towards something else. If anything, this is why I say the call to action with the libertarian political message is broken. It's completely dead in the water. The best that if you want your call to action to be specific and clear. You don't want it to be just kind of vague. You want to tell people, click here to buy. You give people very clear, concise instructions. So if your message is the state is bad and corrupt and all the wealthy and powerful people are working against the rest of us, okay, cool. What do you have to offer? What do you bring to the table? Use government less. Okay, what do we use instead? Have you offered? Do you have a service when you say, whatever your libertarian position is? When you say, well, this is thing you shouldn't have the state do this. Let the market decide. Okay, so what market services would fill that, and why aren't people choosing them? If the thing is that people are not choosing them because they're indoctrinated, you can't change the fact that they're indoctrinated. You have to deal with them as a constant that they're indoctrinated. So you can play the long game and you can work on indoctrinating the future generations. But then you should be working on that, not complaining to people that they're supporting this existing indoctrination. Or if you're going to complain that they're supporting the existing indoctrination, at the least have the alternative to offer them. So this here, when we say that there are no libertarian solutions, this is what we're talking about. Libertarians don't have a product to offer. They claim to be capitalists. They claim to believe in the market, but they'll even go so far as they'll say, well, I'm not the one to decide. I can't be the one to make those decisions. So what you're telling people is your thing sucks. Stop doing that thing. I don't have anything else to offer you. Figure it out for yourself. and that message is just that's not going to fly. People that doesn't solve people's problems. People want leadership. They want security. They want predictability. They want stability. Going after the regime directly with nothing to replace it with is useless at best and suicidal at worst. Suicidal and counterproductive. Because if you understand Popular Liberty's description of archetropism, the regime survives by having opposition. It needs opposition. The regime cannot function as it does without consistent opposition. It's a machine that has been conditioned, engineered to use as fuel the oppositional sentiment. So when you rebel against the regime, you're giving the regime an opportunity to expand itself. When you attack it, you prove to everyone who depends upon it, whose interests are invested in it, that it's good that it exists, and in fact, it needs to be even more powerful because people are amassing against it. So trying to take down the regime on its face is something that you would do if you already had the alternative ready. If you had a viable alternative, in which case you're not trying to take down the regime, you're trying to take power. You're trying to take down the regime to create a power vacuum so your thing can step in. I had someone who was tweeting with me today, and he said that something. I think I'm going to go and have a conversation with him on his podcast. He was a biblical anarchy or something like that. And he was saying, I think it was him. I was talking to a few different people today. Whoever I was talking to, I don't want to put words in someone's mouth. Whoever I was talking to, I was saying that there's a when you say what we need is to remove the monopoly on force or monopoly on coercion. What we need to do is prevent people from using from creating and using a monopoly on force and violence, or coercion and violence and force and whatever you want to call it. What you're describing is you're saying we need a government that prevents people from creating a government. You're saying we need to prevent these actions from taking place. The reason a government is created is to prevent actions from taking place. Now, I know that what they would say most likely is we want people to just resist it on their own. But now what you're setting up for yourself is that virtually every single person in your society needs to be persuaded to join your cause in order for your cause to be successful. It depends upon persuading the entire population. That includes the people who benefit the most from using force and aggression and coercion and violence. You're having to tell those people that you should act against your own interests because of my favorite moral principles. As Popular Liberty points out, prohibiting aggression was what created the state. The state is created to prohibit aggression. There's this paradox that you have to give the monopoly on aggression to a single entity to make it as small as possible. That's how you make it as small as possible. This is why I say the difference between libertarianism and communism is just theoretical. In practice, it becomes the same thing. Libertarianism is built on the notion that political power is a universal human right. I'll say that one more time. Libertarianism is built on the notion that political power is a universal human right. That every single person must have equal political power. That we cannot consolidate political power in one area. It needs to be distributed. And then you're just quibbling over how distributed it needs to be. But baked in is this inherent notion that political power is a human right, that everyone deserves to have it, and that someone not having political power is a moral violation of their own property. this is this it I think that I've laid this out in a way that it should be clear how self-defeating this is. That this is something that will never be successful on a large scale. The only way that you can arrive at a society that operates according to libertarian principles is if it's enforced from the top down. It's a paradox. The only way you can have something like that is if it's enforced from the top down, which means the people involved with it need to be comfortable with someone enforcing liberty upon their lives. So what you need is a political formula, a romantic lie that gets people to buy in to that sort of hierarchical structure, that gives people something higher than free will or their own personal fulfillment. You have to give them a higher vision than that they can buy into, that will inform their behavior, that will persuade them to buy in voluntarily to a system like that, because that's the natural human hierarchy. You need centralized, monopolized power to constrain leftists. That's it at the end of the day. Leftism is war. There will always be people attempting to wage war. And the most effective way that we've derived to this point to constrain that is by consolidating power under as close to one person as possible. The more people that you get involved in it, the more you distribute that power, the larger you make the state. When you distribute the power to everyone, you've distributed the state to everyone. You've now achieved absolute stateness. Because everything and nothing is like, if the state is everyone, the state is no one. If the state is no one, the state is everyone. These happen in the decentralization instinct is imperialism. Decentralizing is imperial. It's the same function in practice. It doesn't matter that your intentions are for that not to be the case. It matters that that's what is the case. So when we talk about the LPMC, we're addressing each level of this like logic chain here. It's not a perfect logic chain, but we're addressing each of these, that you don't have the right message because you don't have the right product, and you're taking the wrong medium. You're using the wrong medium to talk to the wrong audience. All of these are true all at the same time. So, that being said, what's our alternative? Because I've heard a lot of people saying that. Well, what are you proposing as an alternative? And they think that we're talking about fascism or some other thing, because their only conceptualization, as was mine when I first heard these ideas, their only conceptualization of monarchy was, like absolute power, tyrannical, abusive, corrupt, etc. And that's a facet of it. That's a problem. Those are things that have to be solved. Like, you have to solve for the potential for powerful people to abuse their power. So the way to do that is not to try to abolish powerful people. It's to create a system that incentivizes powerful people to invest in that system. And when they invest in it, it makes everyone else's lives better. So you're trying to create a system where everybody's incentivized to buy into it, because when they buy into it, they all benefit from it in a way that they're happy with. That's the engineering problem. That's the thing that you're trying to solve for. Excuse me. So I'm going to get some of these comments here, because these comments are hopping. And Popular Liberty says aggression is a service, a very profitable service. Preventing competition for it drives the price up, same as every other time we've tried it. Exactly. It operates in the exact same manner. If you try to prevent statecraft services or you try to limit statecraft services, you're constraining supply, so you're increasing demand, so the price is going to go up. It's Popular Liberty. So Popular Liberty says profitable in the long run. States have been a thing for 6,000 years and much longer. States collapse when they're bad providers of statecraft and get replaced every single time by better providers of statecraft. Right. Eventually, there is going to be a better provider of statecraft than this one. And it's going to reign. That will happen. This is the natural cycle of history. It's coming. There will be a new provider of statecraft, and what we're building up toward looks like the type of inflection point, like when a democratic republic defeated the largest empire on the planet. We're moving toward a major inflection point like that, where I'm expecting we're gonna see some sort of a collapse in trust in democracy. And I think the way that it's going to be sold is as like improving democracy or perfecting democracy. So this is, let me get this screen share down here. No need to keep looking at that. So do I want to go through this? I'm trying to decide if I want to go through this tweet thread that I made today. No, I think we'll do this another time. I was talking about, I'll just cover a couple of the tweets here. I said Girard's romantic lie is the impetus for Mosca's political formula. A political formula is a contagious romantic lie that has gained a foothold within a community. Successful political movements build around the most powerful romantic lies. So the romantic lie is like ideas that we tell ourselves where we kind of romanticize the reason we did something that we did. And we, I can't remember the exact definition of it, how it's defined in the book. I'm reading the book Wanting by Luke Burgess, but romantic lie is something that directs our activity. It directs our behavior toward, we believe in this romantic lie, and we're kind of guided by this fictionalized ideal that we've created for ourselves, and we follow that. On a social level, a really contagious romantic lie that other people buy into, and you get a bunch of people bought into, that becomes what Gaetano Mosca called a political formula. And the political formula is the idea that the state or the ruling governing institution has legitimacy. And it can be something as like the king saying that I'm the king because God appointed me as king. The divine right of kings, that's a political formula. Today, our political formula is like all men are created equal. We all have human rights innately, and we express our rights by voting, and those votes inform the government on how to govern us. You could make it more simple than that, but that's kind of like it's like a formal definition, but like it's like in practice, none of that applies. In practice, it doesn't work out that way at all. So it's a romantic lie that we've told ourselves that everybody has bound themselves around, has wrapped themselves around, and it's the thing that holds the system together. As long as everybody believes in the romantic lie, it will hold the system together. And what the lie is something related to desire. What we're looking for, we are desiring something. And our desires have been informed by the elites within our society. The elites within our society dictate the culture. They set the agenda. They tell us what to care about. They tell us what not to care about. They tell us where to go. They tell us how to live. This is all programmed into us by our society. Now, lots of people say, "Oh, I'm a free thinker. I think for myself. I don't do all that stuff." Whatever. If you are in opposition to everything within the society, you're governed by it just as much as if you are in favor of it. you're still defined by your relationship to it. And ultimately, just because you're different, even if you are, just because you might be different than the rest of the society, if sufficient people within the society buy into a specific idea, everyone else will just go along to get along because they're the most intolerant group. And getting in their way will cause the most pain. So eventually they don't even have to assert themselves that much anymore. They just have to kind of remind you that they're there and that there's this large body of people, and everyone will just kind of keep buying in to the same lie over and over and over again. Eventually that lie becomes it's a clear lie. It does not function anymore. Nobody buys into it anymore. Everyone sees clearly that the emperor has no clothes. And when that happens, the society collapses to some degree. And it's remade, it's reformed in a new image built around a new ideal. So this has happened throughout American history. And this is part of the fourth turning thesis. So it happens, you get a collapse like this basically every about 80 years, give or take. You have a build up to a major crisis. That crisis results in what's essentially a total war. And at the end of that war, there is a new order established. And from that new order, you get a great time of peace and prosperity and ascendant greatness, tons of growth. And it just so happens that this follows a human life cycle. So a human life cycle for the first 20 years is kind of like your growth period, where you're growing up into adulthood. Then the next 20 years, 20 to 40, is like the peak period. This is your peak health, a peak physical fitness, and maybe not your psychology, but like this is when you're like flying the highest. Then you settle into a midlife. That's kind of a gradual decline from 40 to 60. And then finally, from 60 to 80, you have the winter. This is reflected in seasons as well. You start with the spring, and then you go into the summer in your young adulthood, and then you get into the fall in your midlife, and then winter is the crisis period. It's when you're devolving into death. And with death ultimately comes new life, because throughout this you've got grandchildren. Your grandchildren have grown up. So what these guys did is they this book is called The Fourth Turning, and I think it's Neil Howe and Strauss. I can't remember Strauss's name, but they have this generational theory where they've identified this cycle of 4 turnings. They call the seasons a turning, and each turning has its own distinct flavor. There's consistent themes that happen throughout each turning. You start with the growth period. I can't remember the exact names they use for them, but you have like the growth period, which is the first 20 years. Then you have the awakening period, which is the 20 to 40. Then you have it's called the unraveling period, which is the third part of the cycle, which would reflect the 40 to 60 years of a human life. And then you have the crisis period, which is the last 20 years. And it keeps up. This thing has reflected itself since all the way back to the War of the Roses in the 1400s. This cycle has repeated itself every 80 years or so. So you had, let me pull up the cycles here real quick, and I'll just show them to you. I can share this. Strauss-Howe generational theory. And let me screen share. We do a Chrome tab here. Okay. So, oops. How do I get this to this one? This is what I need. Okay. Let me know. You guys should be able to read this, okay? Oops. Okay. So let me come down to each of the cycles here. They have it broken down by the generations. Okay, so yeah, here's each generation. So the first turning is a high, which occurs after the crisis. During the high, the institutions are strong and individualism is weak. Society is confident about where it wants to go collectively, though those outside the majoritarian center often feel stifled by the conformity. So the most recent first turning in the US was the post-World War II American high, beginning in 1946 and ending with the assassination of JFK, November 22, 1963. So this corresponds to that first turning. Anybody who was born approximately in that era is a boomer. That's the baby boom generation. And the baby boom generation has a really distinct personality. They have a distinct characteristic of their generation. The generation is defined by the way that they think about certain things, which relates to the way they were raised, what they were born into. So they were born into and came of age in the 60s. They came of age in the era of the Great Awakening and psychedelics and rock and roll and then hip hop and so they have a very distinct characteristic about the way they view the world and their set of values and the way they relate to institutions. So the second turning then is an awakening. So it timed just perfectly, the 60s. This is an era when institutions are attacked in the name of personal and spiritual autonomy. So the institution is really strong in the first turning, in the hero age. And then the next generation recognizes, hey, this institution, so that's kind of like a conservative age, time of prosperity, conservative institutions, hierarchies. Then you move to the next stage where people start recognizing they get more individualist, and they're like, hey, these institutions have negative effects. They're suppressing people, they're hurting people, and people become more spiritual. So if you notice the first that first turning is more conservative. It's also more material. People are it's very prosperous, but it's very much focused on building and growth and expansion and creating structure. It's very grounded in material. The second one is much more mystical. People are begin thinking about like self-awareness and spirituality and personal authenticity. And that's what it says. It was the consciousness revolution, which spanned from the campus and inner city revolts of the mid 1960s with the civil rights, and then to the tax revolts of the early 1980s. So the awakening period reflects the 20 to 40 age of a human lifespan. It's kind of the same. It's like coming into your own and beginning to appreciate who you are specifically, rather than the groups that you're a part of. So then the awakening is followed by, in the second turning, is followed by an unraveling in the third turning. So the mood of this era, they say, is in many ways the opposite of a high. Institutions are weak and distrusted, while individualism is strong and flourishing. So the Generation X, if you notice, is much more like this. The whole, throughout the 80s and the 90s, was peak individualism, peak with hip hop and the what am I thinking of here? Like the Breakfast Club, like all those types of movies, all are about rebellion and we're gonna go in our own way, doing our own thing. And the Gen X personality was also, the Gen X people tend to be very much like latchkey kids. They were like just left alone. That was the Generation X, is when like the peak of when people would just kind of go out and play in their neighborhood and go spend all day going out around the city and stuff, and then come home at night. This is when they're like 10 or 15, they're like young kids. If you want to see a really good portrayal of like a Gen X kind of personality in a show, watch the show Shameless. That very much, it's more modern, but it very much reflects the Gen X kind of rebellious, go at my own way, individualist mentality. So if you notice, what happened was the baby boomers were they were born in a high. They came of age in a growth time, and then they were in their midlife through the unraveling period. Baby boomers primarily gave birth to Gen Xers. So the baby boomers were all about, the institutions and not institutions, but they were much more about questioning the institutions. There was much more idealism and more spirituality, and there's kind of like a spiritual awakening happening through that era. And the people who were their children kind of got lost in the flush a little bit. It's like everyone was also having like a spiritual awakening. Mom and dad were working and making money, and so they were able to provide a good living, but they were never around. So the kids got used to being on their own and having lots of stuff. So if you think about the Gen X psychology, having that feeling of abandonment, but also having been kind of given a whole lot of material stuff, they tended to be very materialistic. It's a more materialistic generation, but very individualist. Now we're moving into the millennial generation, which is in the era of crisis. And the millennial personality is kind of the ping pong back the other way from the individualism. It's much more collectivist. Gen X parents who had children didn't want their children to feel as kind of isolated and lost as individuals the way they did. So they turned into helicopter parents. So a lot of Gen Xers who grew up as rebellious individualists became kind of nannying helicopter parents. And so then you think about the way that affects millennials. So millennials get used to the participation trophy. They also are much more bought into the idea of groups, of large groups, of you're with through the millennials. You're going to see a revival in. My guess is with the millennials, you're going to see a revival with with unions. You're going to see trade unions and different organizations. They're getting much more into activism. And I don't know if this is going to work for this. No, I can't use that same. I have to go back to the small one. There we go. So each of the generations is marked by a different archetype of their personality. And so ultimately within the crisis, you get an era of destruction, often involving war or revolution, in which institutional life is destroyed and rebuilt in response to a perceived threat to the nation's survival. After the crisis, civic authority revives, cultural expression redirects toward community purpose, and people begin to locate themselves as members of a larger group. So the previous fourth turning in the U.S. began with the Wall Street crash of 1929 and climaxed with the end of World War II. The GI generation, which they call a hero archetype, that first archetype, they came of age during this era. They say their confidence, optimism, and collective outlook epitomize the mood of that era. The authors assert the millennial generation, which they also describe as a hero archetype, born 1982 to 2004, show many similar traits to those of the GI youth, which they describe as including rising civic engagement, improving behavior, and collective confidence. So one thing of that, there's parts of that don't seem to apply to the millennials as much, because it's millennials are tend to be pretty nihilistic. But a lot of some of that is more the next generation. They call the Highland. I think it's let me get down here to the bottom one here. So yeah, the Homeland generation. So like the Generation Z, they tend to be even more nihilistic because all they've known is crisis. So the millennials are much more civic minded. The millennials are very much into organization and activism, and they'd kind of predicted that they were going to become more conservative because they reflect the millennials are the conservative side of things. You have the conservative liberal TikTok. So millennials are conservative in the same way that the boomers were they're born in a conservative time. They come of age in a conservative time. And then they're also materialist. So they're like collectivist, conservative, materialist. And that's really the way that the millennial political expression kind of manifests itself. If you think of conservative in terms of trying to conserve the established way, the response, the SJW response to Donald Trump was largely a conservative disgust response. It was, this guy's going to take us back to he's going to take us ahead into a reflection of bad times before. We want to conserve our progress. We want to conserve the victories that we've attained. So they're kind of like conservative and progressive at the same time, because they're like, we need to keep pushing the envelope, but also we want to conserve what we've had. So their response to Trump was conserved. And I think that this is a kind of a mimetic theory thing as well, because the hoi polloi, the kids that get involved in political activism, they're just informed by their elites. They're informed by the people who tell them what to think and what to believe through whether it's television or video games or popular TV or whatever. Their values are informed by their elites. The elites are definitely very conservative. They're like, we want to maintain strict control over exactly how things transition and when. And so they need to sell their ideology to the youth to get the youth operating in cahoots with them. So a lot of what we're seeing now is the millennials moving from their let's see, what is it? The millennials were born 82 to 2004. So the millennials are in the 20 to 40 range right now. So we're kind of coming through our like not midlife. Midlife is next. We're through the young adult stage, and we're moving into the midlife stage as Gen Z is coming up. So then the Gen X, these like the individualist, rebellious kind of fuck the system type people, they're the ones who are now moving into positions of seniority. Something that's occurred to me that they didn't really address in the book because they couldn't have. They wrote this book in 1997 and they predicted a lot of what's going on now. One thing that they didn't address was that it seems like the boomer generation has held on to positions of power and influence longer than previous generations did. And it has something to do with the nature of the internet and its effect on income inequality. I think that's all I can think of. That they coming into power when they did, as the internet was coming online, they managed to get themselves into institutional positions that they just haven't relinquished control of. And the younger generations haven't been able to oust them, with the exception of maybe people who came through the tech, through like Silicon Valley. If you look back in past generations, that 1800s, even 1900s, you would have seen presidents of colleges and the president of a bank and major CEOs who were young, who were in their 30s. Now it's like unheard of. You're like a wonderkind if you're a president of a company in your 30s. It's like the same generation that they just keep getting older and older and older. Look at the way the presidents are. Obama was right on the cusp of boomer and Gen X. And he kind of straddled the line, but in general, I think he was basically just another boomer president. And then Trump was a boomer president, and now Biden is a boomer president. So we've had Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden. We've had 5 consecutive boomer presidents. That's kind of crazy. That's crazy to think about. So boomers have really held on kind of past their due date. And an effect of that has been Gen X is backlogging, which means millennials are backlogging even further. This is why millennials can't get a job. This is why millennials are stuck at home. This is, millennials are kind of caught up in the fray. So ultimately, what we can predict from this then is, if I go back to this screen share, you can see the crisis timings. So the fourth turnings in the past were, to start from the very beginning, you had the War of the Roses. And that was in a fourth turning that lasted about 22 years. And then 1482 to 1566, that's 66 plus 18, 84 years until the next fourth turning began, which was the Armada crisis, where the Spanish Armada was destroyed. And that was 22 years. And then you go 1587 to 1674. You've got 87 years to the next fourth turning crisis, which is the Glorious Revolution. Then you get 1700 to 1767. And that last one there, the revolution, that fourth turning lasted 27 years. Then you've got 67 years until the next fourth turning, which is the Age of Revolution, the American Revolution, the French Revolution. And that fourth turning lasted 23 years. Then you get the next one. Now, this one's interesting. I want to study into this a little more because they said that the third turning was skipped in here. And it just went first turning to second turning straight into the crisis turning. So I don't know about that one. But that there, even if you go to the start of the Civil War, in essence, so the 1960, you've got 69 years from the Age of Revolution to the Civil War. And then that turning lasted about 17 years. And then you've got the next one, 1859 to 1925. 41, 66 years. Fourth turning, the crisis, the Great Depression leads into World War II. Notice each of these is escalating. These are each becoming larger and more global. Now, Civil War wasn't necessarily, but the Civil War was, if you notice, this is tracking through like Western civilization kind of. And the Civil War is kind of right at the point where it was the turning point for America, where America became started moving into its dominant imperial status. So each of these kind of remade the prior world order. Outcome of the Civil War was the first time that America successfully accomplished a major imperial target in this age. The North invaded and conquered and maintained the South. So then you go into the Great Depression. So this is now a global depression, and the war is a global war. That was our last fourth turning. We've now been when they wrote this book in 1987, they said within the next 10 years, or about 10 years from now, there's going to be a major crisis. They predicted it. They predicted a few different things, and everything that they predicted has all come true. I won't read through them now, but every single one that they've predicted has all come true. That was, so 2005 is when they identify the beginning of that crisis. That puts us 16 years into the fourth turning. You notice each of the fourth turnings, 18 years, 17 years, 23 years, 27 years, 22 years, 22 years. That puts us 6 at the most, maybe 10 years from the end of the fourth turning, which means we're on pace for some type of total war style event. Now, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a hot war. I don't know if it has to be. I think if it is, that's a very bad thing, obviously. What I think it's going to be is a total remaking of the world order that's going to have some sort of a catastrophic element to it. It's going to be a new universalized system. And there'll probably be a lot of people who die in the process. Now, just because we were talking about this on Wealth, Power, and Influence this morning, and Jason said that he said, I don't know if there's going to be a complete economic collapse. I don't know if there's going to be a war. And one thing I said, I'll say it again here. It will be different for different people. So there may not be an economic collapse for some people, but there will be for others. There may not be a war, a hot war for some people, but there will be for others. Different people will have a different experience through the collapse, through this crisis. What I think, Jason agreed with this as well, he said the same thing, is that we haven't come to the end of the crisis yet. That there's going to be some major event that echoes World War II, Civil War, Glorious Revolution, Revolutionary War, and French Revolution. There's going to be some sort of event like that happens within the next 5 years or so. And then a new order will be established out of that. Now, someone says blockchain is the new world order. I think it's something like that. I don't understand it well enough. I'm going to take Bitcoin Mystery School from Vin Armani so that I can understand it better, precisely for this reason, because I want to know what to expect next. I want to know where this ship is going so that when it crashes, I can be sure that I have my lifeboat ready. I'm ready to, be one of the first people on the lifeboat. Because one thing I said, I was talking with Jason this morning, is that it's like when a ship sinks, the whole ship doesn't go down at the same time. Part of the ship goes under first. And then often part of the ship actually gets way above the water before it sinks. So if you're someone out here on the tip as the ship starts going up in the air, you might feel like, hey, things are getting better and better and better. Look at all this money, all this free money that I just got. Some of the people who are having the most wealth and success now are going to be the people who sink the fastest and hardest. There he is.
Well, that's great because I'm experiencing none of that.
And so then some of the people who aren't are going to be the ones who benefit the most from the remaking of the order.
You're damn right. As soon as we get rid of this modern day slavery, which is something I beg to differ you about, the end of slavery, it never ended. I'm a slave right now.
I saw that there was
You see my
a
tax bill.
quite a conversation going on in the comments. I was trying to avoid it.
Continue.
But yeah, so as the ship goes down, some people will get dropped in the water right away, and they're gonna like swim around and freeze to death, waiting for lifeboats, or they're gonna get sucked under when the boat goes under.
From your lips to God's ears, sir. All right.
Others will be prepared for it, and they'll hop in lifeboats that already exist, but those lifeboats won't be able to carry everyone. So there's going to be some people who are building lifeboats up till the very end, and they launch their lifeboat right at the last minute, and they paddle furiously away, and they get away. And all of those people there are going to be the ones who determine what the new system is going to be, what the new order is going to be. The people who will have the most wealth, power, and influence in that new system are going to be the ones who are invested in building it now. They're going to be the ones who get in the lifeboats first. The ones who are already away and already on the process of building the new ship, who got there first. Those are going to be the ones who determine it. So when I had this thing here, this Word document. So this Word document here, when I wrote, you must be offering the right product. If you're offering the right product, then you must be the right person to sell it. That part there, that's the king pilled point. That's the taking the king pill is realizing that someone needs to build all of these things. Someone needs to build this product. Someone needs to figure out how to bring it to market. Someone needs to figure out how to connect with that market. And then someone needs to figure out the messaging for how to sell it to the market. All of these things need to be built. But in order to build them, in order to know what we're building, in order to know what's going to be the most effective, in order to be the most desirable person, because like if you've worked sales, you know that you'll like be working with someone and you just cannot connect with them. You just can't, like, you keep fighting, you keep disagreeing, you just can't connect with the person. Finally, you're just like, you know what? I don't know, man. I'll just have this other salesperson contact you, and that person hits it off with them, and everything's great. And they sell it, and there's no problems at all. Sometimes they're just not the right person for the job, and there are some people who just aren't the right person to sell these ideas. They aren't the right person to like. There's specialization. Different people have different talents, different skills, but at the baseline, if you want people to buy what you're offering, you need them to buy you. They need to see evidence in your own life that it works, that whatever you have to sell, it works because you've applied it in your life and you've experienced success. So tying it with the realization about monarchy, the realization of the nature of that humans crave a king, just understanding that's when you're kind of, that's the start of the king pill. Then there's the Christ is king realization, recognizing that Christ is the king of kings. And that even if, so there's this whole thing, this romantic lie. And I maybe I'll just go through this. I'm just going to do it.
Let's do it.
I'm going to go through this tweet thread that I did because it actually does tie in here pretty well. But what I need this here and window here. Okay. Okay. So these are the ideas that like I want other people to think about this stuff as well, because I don't know. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I don't know how all this stuff. I don't have all the answers. I just want more people thinking about this and trying to come up with the answers. So I said Girard's romantic lie is the impetus for Moska's political formula. Political formula is a contagious romantic lie that has gained a foothold within a community. Successful political movements build around the most powerful romantic lies. So how does a romantic lie start? It starts when a segment of the elite class identifies something irresistibly desirable and then begins to champion it to the exclusivity of the rest of the elites. This process can be programmed. Romantic lies can be seeded. You can seed a romantic lie in other people. That's a programmable process if you understand how they work. If you understand how to make something attractive to them or how to get people to buy into an idea. So I said a romantic lie is like a god. It's the value. It's the value that you direct yourself toward, that you point yourself at. You're like, I want this value, so I'm going to embody this value in my life. And I said, I wanted to say God is a romantic lie, but that kind of makes me squirm a little bit. So I just said God is the point at which the romantic lie and the truth become indistinguishable. Because there's a degree to which the part of the Christian conversion process, part of the take up your cross and follow me, part of that is necessarily LARPing. That's what having faith is. Having faith sometimes is like LARPing, where you're going through the motions and you're doing it because you know this thing works. You don't necessarily know why it works. You don't necessarily know when it will work or how it will work. You just know it works, and so you're doing it. You just do it consistently, and then eventually it begins to work. Eventually you begin to yield the fruits from it. So that's, to a degree, that's almost like a romantic lie. It's like this thing that you don't know if it's true. Like you're having faith that it's true, but you don't know that it's true. So you're just embodying it. So there's like a point where the romantic lie and the truth kind of become the same thing. And that's the point where God is. So a romantic lie is an aspiration, a highest moral value that drives all social behavior. Shoot for the moon and you'll land among the stars describes this phenomenon. Now, here's where it's going to get a little weird. If you've listened to the Lord of Spirits podcast that I keep like shouting to everyone, to shouting to the universe for people to go listen to, you'll recognize this. This will be this will click for you. Yeah, romantic lie, equality for all, inalienable rights. Yeah, that's a romantic lie. That's a romantic lie that organizes and directs the majority of Western society today. So this is basically sort of a some of it's a summation. Some of it's a summary of what I'm understanding to be the orthodox perspective on the kind of the nature of reality. This is like a history of the kind of the creation of mankind and the fall and all of that. And some of this is me kind of reasoning, like thinking out loud, reasoning through this and imagining that perhaps it works like this. So I said the biblical texts tell of other gods who are subordinate to the Most High God. That's why he's called the God of gods. Their duty is to point people to him. They fell because they began to accept the worship intended for the Most High. So I'm imagining it like the people's worship is directed up as beams of light, and then the little g gods are metaphorically, they're consolidation and concentration mechanisms that function as gateways for the light to pass through to the Most High. So this is kind of how I'm visualizing it. People direct themselves at like a highest value. They point themselves at it, they focus their attention on it, and they focus on embodying it. So you get sports like athletes who sit there and just relentlessly visualize success. They just focus on it, they focus on it, they focus on it, and they go through the motions, and they keep going through the motions, they keep going through the motions, and then eventually it becomes true. Like they've manifested it is the thing that people like to say. So I'm imagining that as like those gods were given a duty, and that duty was to serve as like a gateway for our manifested intention, our worship, our praise to God, that like ascends kind of like a beam of light shooting up there, and it's supposed to, all these beams of light come into them and are concentrated and directed up to the Most High. I'm sort of visualizing it like that. So what they do is they image the people to the Most High. So to continue the metaphor, the gateways are bidirectional, as the gods also image the Most High to the people. So like we can't look on the Most High, we look to the gods who are to direct our gaze to the Most High. And when these imaging gateways are closed, then the Most High is no longer visible to the people, and the people can't worship him if they can't see him. That it gets cut off. And that's like the human condition. We're in this condition where the fallen angels neglected their duty. They hate humanity. They've fallen away from their responsibility, and we're cut off. But we're created to image God. So humanity was created to image the Most High. We were created to be imaging gateways. We are to point ourselves at the highest point and in turn direct others to it. So as I'm describing this, I'm hypothesizing, but I'm thinking through this from like a scientific perspective. Like I'm making a scientific conjecture, a description of reality, not a spiritual like woo-woo thing. I'm like imagining this as actual like technical truth. So liberty is the natural byproduct of society collectively imaging the Most High. If you understand the political formula idea, if you understand the romantic lie concept and the way that people mimic elites, the way that people embody themselves in the hero archetypes, if you understand that, then you would recognize the necessity or the value of one story that if people embody that story, it will serve as like, I don't know if it's a scaling point or shelling point. I don't know how you pronounce it, but like the thing that unites everybody, like without everyone having to be people will naturally cooperate on an emergent basis in the way that the cathedral functions. So the cathedral is like the inversion or like the satanic version of the body of God, the body of Christ. We are to be the body of Christ. We're the extensions of him. He is imaged through us. The king is imaged through his people. This is how it was in ancient times with ancient kings. You were a representative of the crown. You were seen as a representative of the crown. You were identified. Your identity was with your Lord. So when you traveled around, when you engaged in commerce, whatever you did, you were a representative of your Lord. People saw you and saw a representative of your Lord. So if you betrayed that, if you acted, this is why you don't take the name of your Lord in vain. The Lord has given you a set of behaviors that reflect his character. And if you claim to represent him, but you don't actually reflect him, that's taking the name of the Lord in vain. So liberty is the natural byproduct of society collectively imaging the Most High God. For now, I don't care if you think of the Most High as the God of Israel, or if you think of it as whatever you think of it, you could think of it as the universe, whatever it is, it's the most high thing, the most high or most high value that everyone directs themselves to. So those who are pointed at the highest point, at the Most High, they have all that they could need or want. Their lives sell the most powerful romantic lie, and it naturally triggers the mimetic instinct in many of those who encounter it. This is taking the king pill. It's recognizing all of these things to be true. It's embodying this. It's embodying the gospel as a technical truth, it's embodying mimetic theory within the context of the gospel as a romantic lie that accomplishes liberty. I understand that this is vague, kind of, or abstract. It's very esoteric. Fully aware of that. I'm not trying with this, when I'm talking about this, if your eyes glaze over, if you're not into this, that's fine. Like, again, we're not trying to get the largest possible audience. We're trying to get the people who are willing to engage with these ideas, to tangle with this stuff, and figure out how to make it palatable, figure out how to turn this into turn this into a lifestyle. It's a focused lifestyle of engineering, social technology that facilitates all of this. So I said, as we enter a period of crisis and potential total war at the end of the fourth turning, those who are content, stable, and at peace will become mimetic targets by those who pretend that they are. That means some will be sacrificed. People will not like people who are who prove their insufficiency. So if people are claiming that they're just the most happy, fulfilled, content people in the world, and they're actually not, they're completely empty inside.
Yeah, I meant to apologize for that. I've really been trying to put out an image that I'm just really, not living up to. And I know that I come off as, like, oh, everything's going great and I've got all this money and success and fulfillment in my life. But, I just want to take this moment to come clean.
Well, it may actually be like a pragmatic, like strategically going forward. Mm-hmm. You don't want to signal that because it'll get you on the radar of everyone else who feels empty inside.
Oh, wait.
They'll want to attack you for your happiness.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
You're muted.
Oh, the cable did that. Sorry, definitely not. And I just wanted to say there's no happiness here to be found. Not even a little bit.
Yeah. So
don't be a faker like I was when I was talking about how rich and successful I was, is what Matt is trying to say.
So stop being poor, but
yes. Stop lying about not being poor.
Right. That's not as catchy. That doesn't make as good of a shirt. So just to finish off the thread, I said, but there's an opportunity for the rest to position themselves as a new elite who influence the political formula that guides us through the next awakening. If you're spending your time convincing people the state is evil, you're wasting your time. Sell them something better and make it desirable, especially by embodying it in a new elite, and they'll volunteer for it. People will volunteer for the ideas of liberty if it's embodied in desirable people. When you embody liberty in your own life, when you embody the principles that promote liberty, when you begin looking out for other people, when you number one, you're making the most of yourself. You're maximizing your own potential, improving your own human capital, and producing value for the world. And then you're taking that value and you're using it constructively to help other people, to solve problems for them. That's where these ideas have the most power. That's where people will find them desirable. Not because you tell them that you have the best arguments, not because you tell them that they need to wake up. I don't know a single person who loves being told, listen, dude, you need to wake up. That just doesn't connect with anybody.
Especially if you're telling them that while you're working a part-time shift at Best Buy, then it really doesn't work. Keep that in mind, fans. Yeah. I should apply to Best Buy, probably.
That would be you should apply to Best Buy just so you can take a picture of yourself in the uniform with the name tag working there and then quit the same day.
Not that because I'm destitute, but because for the joke that you said. Yeah, that's right. definitely why I should apply to Best Buy. Yeah. I will say, yeah, it does come off as annoying. A lot of the libertarian stuff comes off as pretty annoying. And I know that, and I think the incentive structure there is built on showing that you can win an argument. And no one likes that.
Right.
It doesn't get you anywhere.
If you're approaching this as if you are the holders of the sacred knowledge, and everyone else just needs to let go of their fanciful ideas and cling to your great wisdom, it's just nobody likes that.
There's people who are good. There's people who are like good at it, but like there's people who think that they're good at it, and they come off real bad. They don't
Right. Like
come off
that's
bad.
not a thing that you build a movement around.
They don't come off bad to like other libertarians, maybe, and other libertarians probably quite fancy them. But in terms of the general public, oof. I think like there's like a way that you can kind of just point out, no, doesn't this appear to be kind of hypocritical? You know, look at that. But yeah, the smarm and snark doesn't win many people over. And if the
So
people it does win over, you're talking about part-time Best Buy employees.
right. You're preaching to the choir. That's one thing
Damn
when
right.
people say preaching to the choir, it's like, well, who else do you preach to?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're preaching at the church, you're preaching to the choir. You're preaching to the people who are there. So if you're going to preach to the choir. If you're going to talk to people outside the choir, then you need to be ministering to them.
Mm.
Put yourself in a position of as someone who creates value, someone who produces to make the world better around you, someone who looks like they've cracked the code, looks like they've hacked the matrix. When people associate libertarians with peaceful, prosperous, large families, involved with successful companies that change the world. When people associate libertarians with that, you won't need any arguments. You won't need to talk people into embracing liberty. They'll see what it looks like and they'll want it for themselves. Right now, there is nobody embodying liberty in that context. And this is where the stop being poor thing comes in. Like, it's a meme, and I've leaned into it just because it triggered people. And I like triggering people who are going to be triggered, because then it like identifies them for me. Like, if you get triggered by that, okay, I know that you're not the type of person to talk to. But that's what that means. That's what stop being poor means. It means don't be some like impoverished jerk off, who isn't like the most successful thing you've ever done is get involved in a political movement. Like that person is the worst possible person to be involved with something like that. But if all you have to show for your involvement in this is your passion for the movement, you're going to have to offer something more. You have to have tangible solutions to sell people on. If you're going to get someone to stop buying a Chevy, you got to offer them a Ford, or a Dodge, or whatever else. You don't just say don't buy anything. You got to prove to them why it will make life better for them, and you prove it not by persuading them, but by demonstrating it, by embodying it. Man, how did you get to be so? How'd you get to be where you're at? How did you get to be, with such a large family and so successful and all this money and whatever? Like, how'd you get to do that? Oh, well, this is what I believe in. These are my principles. This is what I value. So for the vast majority of people, I would say you have no business getting involved in the political party. To the people who would meet the standard, the people who have the money, the people who have that already in their lives, the people who are already invested in improving their own communities, in inventing products or innovating in industries or employing lots of people or solving a problem for lots of people. Those people who are like, okay, well, what about me? Should I get involved in politics? Those are the people who, if someone's going to get involved in politics, those are the people who should be. Then the question is, what's the most effective way to change the world through politics? And given the nature of the beast, openly confronting and assaulting it on its face is the least productive way. If you're going to vote, make your vote really, really valuable. Make it, X number of dollars. That's what lobbying is. Lobbying is just people paying to have a more impactful vote. People paying for a bigger vote. If you're going to get involved in politics, get involved on that front. or just work at your local level. But if your goal is like, we want to change things at the local level, one of your biggest assets will be moving in silence, not telling people you're coming. If you're going to do a big, gigantic national campaign, that's going to undermine your local efforts. So even if you get to the point where you're like, all right, well, I've got money, I've solved all these things, I'm embodying the king-pilled lifestyle. Even then, the LP isn't going to be the best route. If you just want to get involved in electoral activism, then go to the GOP. Work with Tho Bishop. Focus on something that's going to actually move the needle, not a movement built around a bunch of counterproductive, self-defeating rhetoric. I think that's about all I got.
I would have just not even said anything. I would have just
click
the stream right there. Yeah. Oof.
All right. Oh, I got a joke.
We're gonna sit here.
An atheist, a libertarian, and a vegan walk into a bar. Which one tells you about it first? Spoiler, it's the same person. Is preaching to the choir in the LP equivalent to the LP is whoever shows up? Is preaching to the choir in the LP equivalent to the LP is whoever shows up? So I understand what he means when he says the LP is whoever shows up. He recognizes that
quote, right?
Right, yeah. That's a Sarwar quote. He recognizes that the purpose of a political party is to organize for the sake of taking power.
Oh, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I think one of the things when you talk about, and I don't know if this is entirely what you mean, but when you say that the purpose of a political party is to
organize for the purposes of taking power.
When you say that, and not messaging, I think what might get lost on some people who are probably just pretty quick to say, you're an idiot. You can message from a political party. I think what happens when you get involved with something like that is, especially if you're not careful, but I think just inherently getting involved in something like that, and as exemplified by what Nick Sarwark said, you start behaving according to the incentives that exist within whatever system it is that you involve yourself with. So I think even Nick not a huge fan, but even when he was kind of making the point with Dave about if Dick Cheney was running, I'd have to endorse him because this, that, and the third. I think he, even in some kind of quasi self-aware moment, he was sort of saying, well, Dick Cheney would probably get votes. I am here if I want to keep my position, and the metric is getting votes. I would have, right. So even if your intentions are sort of outside of that and they're pure and you just want to use something for messaging, you get involved in politics. And I can see people that I know personally who got involved in politics, just change and become sort of politicians, whether they had the intention of or not. And I think part of what people lose when you bring up that point, that the purpose of a party is not messaging, the purpose is to whatever you said, is that you will find yourself in some capacity behaving to those incentives.
Exactly. And those incentives are that's the nature of the game. That's what he's saying there. That was really one of the first things that sent me down this pathway, thinking about all this stuff, was realizing that he was right.
Right.
And I hate saying that he's
right. And so it wasn't like a celebratory moment for you to think that you agreed with Nick Sarwark on something. It was more of probably a red flag, wait, is Nick Sarwark right about something? What's going on? And
right.
Then, start kind of pulling on that string. Right.
Because what he said right with that was, he said, my job isn't to convert people to libertarianism. That's your job. He said to Dave, speaking of his podcast, he's like, that's what you guys are supposed to be doing. You guys are the ones that educate people and evangelize to them. That's the purpose of a podcast, or a podcast built around that idea. And it's a valuable tool for that, because of all these people have all said that Dave got on their radar through the Joe Rogan experience. He's already has that platform. And he says, oh well, it's because when we start when we do a political campaign, there's just like a special energy around it. That it gets people organized. Well, yeah, that's the purpose of a political campaign, is to get people organized to take power. So if you're going to do a political campaign, then do a political campaign where you organize for the purpose of taking power. If you're going to do a messaging campaign, then you have to sell a message that will change people's lives on its own, that has a clear call to action, that will move tangibly toward liberty. That's what your message needs to be. So if your message is the state's responsible for your impoverishedness, the state, it's the state's fault that everything is as bad as it is, there should be no state and limited government, and look what the Fed's doing and all that. If you don't have a call to action contained within that can change the world on its own, then you're just going into the wrong venue with the wrong tool. You're trying to sell a message that ultimately the way that it's going to play out is that the message is join the Libertarian Party. Like that's how incentives will work going forward. The message will ultimately be, look how much momentum we're building. You need to join this party because we're going to be able to start winning some stuff here. But they weren't clear about that from the jump. Because if you're going to start winning stuff, well, what are you going to win it for? You're like, okay, well, we're going to hold on to the LP. So we're going to make the LP more powerful and we're going to start winning stuff with it. Okay, well, any organization that's not explicitly left-wing, not explicitly right-wing, will eventually become left-wing. So if you're going to take over the LP, you better make it explicitly right-wing and have it get into activism for explicitly right-wing causes. Because if you don't, then you just made the Libertarian Party more powerful for Nicholas Sarwark.
Insert non-binary rees here.
Right. Right. So this is, if you're going to go the Libertarian Party route, use the political party for what a political party is for, to gain power, then you need to have a clear idea of what you're going to do with that power. And it needs to have tangibly wrestled with the ideas that we're talking about, the stuff that we're bringing up. We know that eventually things are going to move to the point where people are going to be like, oh, this is an opportunity to take power. And we can start playing spoiler. We can force the parties to play our hand, whatever. I'll say this. I said this last night with Jose Galison on that episode, which you guys definitely should go listen to if you haven't, because we got into a little bit more of kind of the interpersonal dynamics of the Lions, or the Liberty lockdown conversation, and we got a little more into that stuff then. So go listen to that as well. But one thing I said is that I don't doubt that they're going to build a lot of momentum. Like, I have no doubt that they're going to make a lot of noise. They're going to get on a lot of platforms. Dave is going to get the Joe Rogan endorsement. He's going to get the Tim Pool endorsement. He's probably going to get the whole IDW endorsement. Like, all of those people. He's going to get an endorsement from a lot of people. And even in spite of that, it still isn't going to be worth it. And I'll even go further than that. In a fourth turning, at a major crisis, almost every time, the side that lost in that crisis lost permanently, or at least for an entire generation. So, like, the political party of the losing side was dissolved or subjugated for a generation. It's very likely that whomever wins the 2024 election, that party will permanently defeat the opposite party. And I can see a couple ways that this goes. I can see a repeat of 2020, but more.
Oh.
Where the election is fortified again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just permanent Democrat rulership now that's clearly blatantly fraudulent but it's just a complete banana republic and not even pretending to be legit anymore, and it's full global government. That whole thing, the whole like Orwellian Brave New World technocracy.
Yeah.
There's that possibility.
It looks like it's leaning that way, if we're being honest.
It does. The other possibility is
God
Republicans
Emperor
make a big
DeSantis.
You get someone who is not who acts like God Emperor DeSantis, who sells that message really well, really buys into, gets the right-wing traditionalist types, really gets them going, but ultimately kind of has a message of conciliation. Has like a message of, we're going to take power and we're going to have peace. We're going to usher in an era of peace where everything is just becomes kind of standardized and uniform, and we're going to get infrastructure, and like sells a very kind of populist right-wing message, but it's going to have the distinct flavor of the regime. It's just going to smell like that. That would be the smart move. Would be for the dark money to throw itself behind like a Matthew McConaughey or a personality like that.
Yeah, so that way, kind of how like there's not like a real left anymore. That way there would be no real right. It's just like
like there's no real critical race theory. You get it lost in the fog.
Yeah.
And then you get to, and you look at it, you're like, look at this. There was a huge turn and shift, and you really get all of right-wing America really buying in, like, look, we're moving forward, we're making progress. We knocked back those stupid, I can't say that word on here. And we're taking over because they like make concessions on economics or something like that. Like that would be the smart move on the side of the elites, is to pivot into national populism and use a national populist message that is like there's ways that they can sell it to make it like amenable to on like a global level. Like we're going to have national populist uprisings, or you could paint this as like this new age of prosperity. There's, and maybe you incorporate a cryptocurrency or something. I don't know, whatever. You could get all these different things you can do with it, but the way to rally in all of the opponents to the regime would be to pander to them and make them feel like they're winning. And either way, I expect that one of the political parties is going to be no more. Whichever party loses the 2024 election will be eradicated. If that happens, the Libertarian Party now is the second largest party in a two-party system. Is that of any value? I think that if you think that would be of value in moving toward liberty, you don't truly understand the system you're up against. Because being brought into the fold in that sense would be being made into controlled opposition. You're basically in a position where you're trying to reform the regime, and you're allowing the regime to use you to prop itself up for longer. What would be best is for one of the political parties to collapse and there to be no viable alternative. There is no alternative. This is a one-party regime that's enforcing itself on society. There you go. Power is formalized. Everyone understands exactly what it is. There can be no arguing. That would be the situation that you would want. So, like, I hope that in laying all these things out, like, I feel like we've made it pretty clear that we understand what the LPMC is trying to do. We've run through all the possibilities, all the simulations of how it could work out. And we're granting that the LP could become the second largest party in the country. And we're still saying that would not move us toward liberty in the way that it's being conceived that it would. Obviously, I can't absolutely prove the future, predict the future. So I can't say that it is not moving us that way at all, but not in the way that people are imagining it. They're imagining this revolution, this uprising and awakening, and everyone's like, hey, you look at the fourth turning. We're not in an era of an awakening. The awakening, the spiritual awakening era, where you come into this individualist new paradigm, that's the second turning. That's not going to happen for 40 or 50 years. We're moving into, let me think about this. It goes material, mystical, material, mystical, material. No, I need to play with that idea. I need to figure that out, because I'm looking at this model, and you can lay over it almost every other model, every other like ping-ponging model, any sort of bipolar model, that they all fit with this really well. Like I was thinking about this, the turning cycle, and using desire to understand the turnings. So it's like on the upswing, when you're going through the first two, the growth period and the awakening period, it's like those are times where everyone's needs are being satisfied. You're focused on the bare necessities to ensure that everyone has shelter, food, security, stable employment. You're like establishing the baseline. You're taking care of everyone's needs. Once you've got everyone's needs satisfied, then you're like, you turn to the mystical kind of. You're like, okay, well, what do I want? I have everything that I could need. We're at the time of plenty. We're at the peak production in the economy. Everything's great. I have everything I could need. What do I want? What else is there? What are the possibilities? What's the potential? And as you get into the wants, you drift back into the mystical, and that brings with it eventually you're getting away from the baseline tried and true stuff. You're getting out into hypothetical stuff, and so it ultimately brings about a collapse and a crisis, and then you start all over again, and this never-ending cycle continues. And it's that same thing, ping-ponging back between satisfying needs and then satisfying wants, then satisfying needs and satisfying wants. And ultimately, we don't know what to desire. Once we start satisfying our wants, we start pursuing strange desires. And we talked a lot about strange desires in the first half of the show, so I won't go into that anymore.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, I'm starting to lose my voice because we've been talking for so long. Go to like, share, and subscribe. Those are the things. This.
Don't subscribe. We're still
no. Don't subscribe. Don't subscribe.
Got the 888 going still.
Yep. We got to state that if you show up and we're at 887, you can subscribe.
Right.
If you show up and we're at 889,
like 2 million.
If we're at 889, then go away and take someone with you. So we got 31 watching right now and 11 like we got a dislike already. Someone came in and disliked it already. But we need more.
Yeah, we need more dislikes. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're not driving away the right people. Yeah, so and then share the show, and as I've said before, don't share it with someone who won't like it. Share it with someone who will. We're trying to create an echo chamber. We don't want your kind around here if you don't agree with us.
Go on, get.
So yeah. And then follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. You can follow neither left nor right Steve at Messina
Inc.
Don't
follow. Oh, please don't follow me.
And yeah. Oh, and then PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Use promo code King. Get 25% off any order over $75. We appreciate Carlos and Vanessa. I need to go contact Carlos and get set up with an interview with him. He's got his Los Libertinos podcast, and we're gonna talk about aligning interests. I think that's his term, aligning interests. So, yep. And then go.
Yo también. Yo necesito.
El rock negro.
Hablar con mi gente.
I'm so glad that we finally you've unveiled that publicly.
I love him so much. It only comes from the best place.
Yeah. It's great. All right. Yeah. There was one other thing I needed to go watch the interview I did with Jose Galison and it was great. And this weekend, I'm going to be having a conversation with Adam Patrick from You're Talking Over Me and Aaron from Timeline Earth. We're all, I think that's who is in the conversation. So that'll be very interesting. I really enjoy talking to Adam every time I get the opportunity, and it'll be good. So we'll see you guys later.